Well, my friend, Dan Short. Dan, how you doing today?
Not too bad yourself.
You know what? Thank you for taking some time. I'm doing better now. Um, it's great to have you join me. Can't wait to talk more about you and your business. But let me give a brief intro for those who may not know Dan. Dan Short is the Chief Creative Ginger. That's right, kids. Creative
Yeah,
Ginger is his title. I know, but listen, we're ginger brothers from a different mother, I think. So
yeah. I agree. It was a lot more ginger, but I've gotten old and kids.
yes, I do know, but you are running the show over at Short Designs,
Yes,
and
sir.
we've known you for a little bit, and it's been a while since we've had a chance to connect. And you were over at the shop the other day by us, and I was like, oh my gosh, Dan, we've been talking about recording this session forever. So I'm so glad and grateful that you were able to carve some time out and join me. So
Hey,
um,
thanks
so
for having me.
yeah, so thanks again. So this is our series where we like to put the spotlight on you. We like to talk about the ups and the downs and keeping it real, and I know you will. We sometimes refer to it as a profile of success,
Right.
but we know that the road to success often has some potholes and some speed bumps. You kind of have to navigate through it. So why don't we start there? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business and who your some of your customers are, so the listeners can kind of get a vibe and figure you out a little bit.
So my customers are all over the place. So I could do anything from local businesses to sporting clubs to I'm also one of those people that will jump on what's hot and new in the media, I guess you could say. That's a wonderful thing about
Oh, I like
wonderful
that.
wonderful thing about DTG printing is if you have an idea and you can design it, you can print it within minutes.
Media merch. Is that what you call it? Media merch?
Pretty much current events merch.
Okay. I love that.
So,
So
uh,
anything in the news, political, I'm sure, right?
oh yeah, I might have been known to touch on political every once in a
That's code for yes.
while, possibly.
That is great stuff. So what is there a favorite of yours? Is there like you'll take business from anybody, but if you could clone your best customer, you would prefer to go into this vertical or this kind of business, or maybe not.
Not really.
Okay.
Probably at anything that I can run with. Being a having 20 years, 25 years now, man, I'm old in graphics. If they give me the keys to run with it, I will run with it. I've done everything from printing for sports organizations to I actually did some printing for the local Metallica concert here lately.
Oh, wow.
Not
Nice.
for them personally, but people that were affiliated with that. That was a fun little job. Very quick turnaround.
Gotcha.
Um, to printing for children's birthdays to anything really.
I love that. I love that. You keep it
So
diverse, you keep a variety, keeps it fun.
absolutely.
Um, Tell us a little bit about when we think about when you got started in the business. Were you doing anything in the decoration world, or did you have any equipment before you got the DTG printer, the Epson F2100?
I did. So I've had, let's see, hold on. Sublimation, which actually is probably in the window behind me. You can probably see it, my F570 sitting back there.
I do see
But
it.
I actually got started with doing laser work
Oh,
and everything from tumblers to I did all kinds of photo etching to anything and everything with the laser. Actually, I've done apparel with a laser too. Believe it or
sure.
not, you can laser jeans.
Absolutely. I
So,
was just going to say, was it denim? Because that was my
yep,
favorite thing. Yeah.
yep, yep. So I started with that. I've got a background in print, commercial print, but as far as my own, everything that I've done for myself, started with a laser, then got into sublimation. I did HTV and for a little bit only because I had a big old Graphtec plotter that I was
Hmm.
cutting. I had a request for some decals, and that ended up, it was financially made sense for me to pick it up. But let me tell you, I don't like weeding. I don't have the patience for it.
I haven't met anyone
So,
yet that actually likes it. Some people think they enjoy it at first. Oh, this is fun. It's therapeutic. And then you say, yeah, talk to me after you do 10,000 of those.
right. Oh, absolutely. And then me being the glutton for punishment, I decided to push the envelope and go, let's see if we can weed a mandala.
Oh
I
my
did.
goodness.
I did. 10 hours later, I had the worst headache of my life.
Yeah,
But,
that explains a lot about who you are right there. Let me tell you.
right.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't really know you had such a deep connection with lasers and laser engraving. I mean, I knew you mentioned it, but
Yep.
that was really your start into I would say, a decorating technique, right? Is that fair to say?
Pretty much. I mean, it was just one of those things that I'm very much in, whether it's DTG sublimation, let's throw something at it and see what it can do.
Love
And
that.
is this even possible? Let me try it. Let me tinker. Believe me,
Uh,
I burned a lot of denim on my way.
I was gonna say, if you can put up with the creative process, and there sometimes is a trail or a wake behind you, but other than that, it's fun. It's the creative side. It's why I love getting into these conversations with people like you, because there's always something different. There's always some new. Let me try it. I don't know. Let's find out. But I think that attitude actually is a big part of how you've been successful, or why you've been successful, because you've been willing to push the envelope a little bit.
I agree. And I'm also very, if my mind is set on something, I'm going to keep going on it because it's more for me going, I can do this. And to be fair, you can't always do it. There's some things you just can't do.
A
There's
cake?
limitations. There's
What?
limitation. Yeah, there's limitations on machines and things you have to do. But for the most part, it's just, I think this can be done. Let me try it. And I've come up with some really cool ideas just going, let's see if this works.
Yeah, that's
If it
cool.
doesn't, if it doesn't work, at least we tried.
Well, you can cross some things off the list. You know what? Next time the customer asks, you'll be prepared to say, nope, tried that, can't go there, dead end.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
so that's an interesting. So I got to hear the story about how did you bridge into DTG printing? Because if you were happy with sublimation, you seem like you were making your way through the navigating through the laser engraving world. So suddenly you become a DTG, a digital decorator, and not that you weren't already because you had sublimation, but what led you to direct to garment printing?
Well, there were three things that came into that. One, sublimation. I didn't like the feel of the shirts, and I could only do on white. You can do light colors too, but for the most part, for vibrancy, you can only do white. Sublimation, when I was doing it, they didn't have the shirts and the substrates that they do now that are a lot more of that cotton feel. They had some, but not much.
Mhm.
And we're talking well before I got my F570, but I didn't like that. The customers, they didn't mind it too much, but the biggest thing is I do a lot of work for female customers, and a lot of the whites and stuff like that are almost have like a see-through to them. Beautiful colors, beautiful prints, and like I said, now there's a lot
Right.
more shirts out, but with the see-through, some of them are into it, some of them aren't. So,
Some of them are into it. Most of them
so
aren't.
but yeah, exactly. So,
Okay.
and then when I was doing the HTV, it was one of those things like, okay, I can do this on dark colors, but obviously I'm limited. You can layer and that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
let's go back to the weeding again. I don't want to weed things.
Right.
So when I kind of got the bug to check out the DTG,
Hmm.
it was, I'm like, wow, with my graphics background, we can do something with this. And then realistically, I got the approval from the wife looking at me going, hey, I can get free shirts. I'm like, sure. And here we are. How many years later? I'm still printing free shirts.
Well, she is your wife, so I think
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I get, if that's how I get the wife's approval to invest in it. I
so.
I,
Tell
I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. I didn't mean to cut you off. So I was
Oh,
just
no, no, you're
curious.
good. I think now after all of this, I'm losing money in this deal with the wife on free shirts.
Too many free shirts. Um,
Right.
well, hopefully there's a limit there. You gotta. But where I wanted to go next was thinking about that process. Like I know you as an analytical guy. You like to study it. I mean, you're willing to go for it, but you're pretty good at checking. Well, what's the real story? What's the rest of the story, or what's the part they're not telling me? I know you like to research. I know you like to kind of do your due diligence. So, how did you find out, or how did you arrive at the destination and the conclusion that this was the printer for you, and that you got it from us?
So I over research everything
Wait, you
down to
what? You what? Say
over
that.
research everything. Let me tell you, my laser took me almost 6 months to purchase. And that's just, yeah, way too much. And let's start with everything you read on the internet is pretty much a lie. So you have to really sift through all of that and figure out what the good information, what the bad information is. So I did a lot of reading, research, and comparison. Obviously, my final decision was between the Brother and the Epson.
Mhm.
And the selling point of the Epson is you can leave it off and you're not going to clog your print heads. You don't have to run it every day. I'm going into pretty much full-fledged into an apparel industry that I don't know if I'm going to be successful or not. So I'm not going to have a machine that I have to run every day. I can only print, so much stuff
Mhm.
when
You can only
I,
print so many of those free T-shirts for your wife, and then
right, exactly. And then so when it came to the Epson, I'm like, okay, well, you can turn it off. That's kind of cool. I can leave it off for, up to 2 weeks, and that makes sense. I'm like, at least while I'm building my business, I don't have to be running it, wasting anything. So from there, with my over researching again, everybody kept mentioning Equipment Zone. And I've vastly, quickly found out that all pricing is standardized across no matter where you get the machine.
yeah,
But the thing that kept popping up was the training, the support, training, support. And you see some of these people saying, hey, I picked up this machine, but I don't really know anything. And Equipment Zone is everywhere is known for their training and support. And now, as somebody who's had my machine for 3.5, 4 years, I don't know,
yeah. I
something
didn't
like that.
check, but I think it was coming up on 4.
Yeah,
I didn't actually look.
it's somewhere around there. I completely agree. And I knew that if I was trained correctly on the machine, success would be a lot easier because I've got the print background. So I know the graphics, I know the general printing process, how it works, your colors, all of that. I just
Mhm.
don't know how to apply it to a t-shirt.
Right.
So that's where you guys kind of came in. And I actually, with you guys being local at the time, before your new office, came down and met with you and Terry, and I still remember to this day. I love the therapy taco.
That's right. It's right here, buddy. You never know,
Yes,
right?
that's fantastic. The wife still laughs about that to this day. She's like, "You really had a therapy taco?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" And
I
that's how we
mean,
became that's how we became best friends because we're just don't take life too seriously.
yeah.
So I came down with a file that I knew, well, not that I knew, that I figured from a print aspect. I'm like, if it can print this image, we're good because it's got high gradients, stuff
Mhm.
all over the place. I'm like, I know the file is good. Let's see what this machine can do. And it printed wonderfully. And working with Roy over there and being able to bounce technical questions from the printing aspect off of him,
Mhm.
from my experience in printing, and answered all of my questions. And that's when the famous wife's line came and says, hey, I can get free shirts, and I got approval. So, and here we are with a printer.
I love the fact that you did, first of all, you did your research. You did check out everything on the internet. I love the fact that you arrived on Epson as the platform of choice. And clearly, we love the fact that you picked us because you probably had 17 other dealers selling the same thing at the same price. The fact that we were local maybe had a little bit of a pull, but here's what I love. I love that you came down to kick A, the tires, and B, to bring us a file, because the reality is that's not something that everybody would have been capable of doing. And
Right.
I'm not trying to, you know, put a negative spotlight on anybody, but I'm just saying from what our customers have told us again and again and again, that's a plus. That helped people like you, clearly, who know your graphics, who are not brand new to all things. I mean, it was a new printer, but you already had some experience. You already had a lot of experience, in fact. So, I mean, kudos for you. That's a smart buyer. You're a smart shopper and a smart buyer, I think.
I agree in that fact that what you guys did was fantastic there. The other thing that I will say is when I came to visit, I didn't get the new or used car. I think the used cars were a sales pitch. And it was more one of those things going, let's educate you about this machine first and make sure that your purchase is correct. Of course, me being the shiny new toy tech kid, you don't have to sell it to me. I'll sell it to myself.
You we
It's
we knew you
shiny.
already wanted it. Yeah, we knew.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that was nice. It was just nice to exactly. I'm like, hey, can we print this file? Sure, why not? And let's see what it can do.
I
And
love
that's the
that.
that's the biggest thing is the proof is in what came out of the machine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I
Right.
look at that and go, okay, well that can be done. And if I then purchase this machine and I can't get those results, well, I know the issue's me, not my printer.
Well, yeah,
So
that's a very grown up thing to say. That's not easy for a lot of people to accept and understand that the printer is what it is, and it has limit. You already brought this up. It has limitations,
absolutely.
and but yet nevertheless, you were impressed with the quality and the output, and to a certain degree, I think you were impressed with maybe our not impressed, but you were accepting of our vibe. You know, we have a certain style. I often look at me. I mean, people say, you know, so do you work at a skateboard shop or, you know, are you in the, you know, video lawn maintenance? What do you do over there, Jay? I'm like, yeah, I'm the AV guy. No, definitely not, by the way. But it's just we want to be authentic to you too. We don't want to put on that those you know those traditional sales vibes. We want to make sure that it's a fit for you first, and if it's a fit, you know, then we can encourage you and point you in the right direction. But at the end of the day, we want this to happen. You know, our goal 3 years ago, 4 years ago with some of our
Right.
clients is that we can build this relationship and we can ask each other questions and you can push us a little, challenge us and say, well, why not? And we're like, I don't know, because we've never done it. So let just like you, let's go test it. Let's go figure it out.
Right.
Maybe we can learn together. So thank you for the compliment. I will take it as a compliment, but I will
Oh,
also say
absolutely.
we appreciate your you know your willingness to you know push us a little bit and you know because at the end of the day you're going to come at this with some concerns and those concerns even if we've heard them 100 times, which we have,
Right.
it's new to you, so we ought to respect you know where you're coming from and hopefully we did that. And if I remember right, one of your concerns was the maintenance of it because I think you'd heard some horror stories or something. If I'm maybe I'm mixing things up, or is that
Right.
right?
No, that is true. And of course, and it's being in the industry now, and that's why I kind of always say the internet's a scary place. I tell you what, there's some good tidbits out there, but most of it is terrible. As far as even when I was doing my research, and the main selling point, and when I came down to check it out, as we talked about, was being able to turn it off. But then we're talking about the maintenance of things, and there was some weird stuff out there. And most, you have a lot of people saying, yeah, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. That discussion still goes on today,
Right.
monthly, and you're going to get, half and half, but that's a totally different story. But the vibe that I got, especially talking with Roy and Terry and yourself, is you're telling me how it is. It's not one of those. I'm very much a vibe type of person, and I didn't feel like I was being told what I wanted to hear. And I figured that the maintenance wasn't nearly as bad as it was, and you guys just confirmed. I'm like, okay, cool, we're good.
Nice.
But yeah,
Well,
there's so much weird stuff out there.
yeah, and I remember that conversation, in fact, where you had said, "Well, I read, or I, you know," and you were trying to find the truth, and
Right,
that's a fair, you know, yeah, of course you are, of course, you know,
right,
you're getting ready to invest at the time, I think $16,000,
yeah,
if I remember right, plus accessories, plus you know, pre-treatment machine and ink, platens, you know, next thing you know, you're looking at a 20 plus thousand dollar investment,
yeah,
thinking
absolutely.
what the hell am I about to go do here? and
Right,
and and I don't know how many free T-shirts this is gonna. You know, my wife's gonna want a free. Yeah, right for 20 grand. Wait.
right.
So you know, but kudos to you again. I just think, and to all of our buyers and any listener that's watching this now is, you know, do your due diligence, do your homework. Take it for face value that every company that has these printers is at some point trying to sell you, including Equipment Zone. But how we do it is important, and the service after the sale, and the ability to contact people, and the ability to continue your educational, you know, because it's not a one and done. I'm going to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're still learning things about the printer.
Oh, absolutely. But that's with anything. I personally feel if you're not learning or pushing the envelope, you're going to fall behind. So whether that's trying this or trying new things, or heck, DTF really wasn't even a thing when I bought my printer.
No, it
It was
wasn't.
out there. It was most of those
Yeah,
homemade conversions and this, that, or whatever.
yeah.
But DTF came around, and I was a little bit apprehensive about it. So
Oh, let's
it's one of
call it
those.
what it is. You were completely negative about it, Dan. Come on. Yeah, it's like,
listen,
why would I do that? Why would I transfer? Why am I I don't want to say it the way you would have said it because there was probably some language involved. But
that's probably
you,
accurate, but I'm a DTG guy at heart. That's what I
that's what I was
am.
going to say. That's why
So,
you love the direct application of printing directly
correct.
on that substrate, and the fact that you
Yep.
can't feel it, that it's a water-based ink, and even with a pre-treatment below it, it still gives you such a soft hand. I know that's your thing. I know that's your jam.
Absolutely. And I'll do that, but I'll say that all day. But I have found great uses for DTF, different applications, and I've learned to love it a little bit.
It'll open up a few doors, and you'll be like,
Yeah.
okay, wait a minute, this is pretty versatile. This is pretty cool. So
No, it's a wonderful process. Both DTG and DTF have a great place in the market, and they can coexist very well together. But yes, I really was not on board when it first came out. But that's going back to that. That's something that when I bought my printer wasn't really a thing. So
mhm.
it's like, oh, now I'm seeing all of
Right.
this, and I heard about it, and you have people in the industry. They're like, oh, this is the way it's going. And then once you guys got on board with it, I'm like, all right, now I'll try it. Now I'll give it
Yeah.
a whirl,
Yeah.
and that's pretty cool.
No, it is pretty cool. Well, let's go back. Let's go back to those beginning days. You got your printer.
Mhm.
You got trained. You got some training. You were able to make some mistakes and have some victories. What were those early days like for you? What did the DTG printer did it deliver the way you hoped? The way you expected? Like you're like, okay, and not only did I think I made a great decision, but now you're maybe 6 months in, were you like, yes, this is it?
Yes, and 6 months in, yes. When I first got it, yes and no.
Yeah.
Did the printer
So tell me about the nose. What were some of those bumpy spots where you were like, son of a?
the no was honestly me being in having the print background and the graphics background is good. However, it's also a curse when you're trying to apply it to something like, um, DTG or any other things that you do. But I was expecting a 100% solid, perfect print every time.
Mm,
And it took a while for me to get behind the fact that there's pores in that shirt. It's not always going to happen because we're filling those pores.
mm,
Now, with the right pre-treat and the right substrate, it's pretty darn close. But one of the my favorite lines when I was getting trained, and it's not the exact quote, but I'm just gonna
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
Go for it.
paraphrase what I remember, is I'm talking with Roy as I'm going through my training, and we're going over things, and I brought something up, and he's like, this is why I don't like working with graphic guys. And he's like, you're looking, and it was at that point that he went through and explained, he's like, listen, he's like, the detail that you look for and that you're used to and other things isn't always going to be here. You just have to make a good quality sellable shirt. And I'm like, that still resonates to me today, where I will print something and go, it looks a hair off. I'm the only one that sees it.
Yeah. Good
It's
point.
it's it's still a great print, but it's me being overly picky on what I'm doing because that's just who I am by nature.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So
You have a high expectation, and you have a graphics background that's rich in color and rich in vibrancy and opacity and detail. And those are things that are important. And ink on paper, you can achieve things that are, I mean, literally photorealistic.
correct.
Ink on t-shirt, we can get close, but we're not really that close, right?
Right. No, absolutely. And I'm to the point now with, if I have my choice shirt and everything like that, it's pretty much dialed in where it's exactly where I want it. But no, you're never going to get that photo print and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I tell you what, the other thing that drove me absolutely nuts, speaking of limitations of the machine, and I say this with an asterisk because there's ways around it, is I do a lot with glows, fades, gradients
Mm,
out of the box. I'm printing this and I've got drop shadows here fading off into, let's just say we're going on to black, but I'm still getting this white halo
yeah.
around. And I'm like, it took me a minute to realize, I'm like, okay, I understand what the printer's doing. It's putting the white down because we have the fade going, but why is the white extending past the black? This doesn't make any sense. I've since solved that problem with another one of your fabulous products, but
Well,
um,
and that's solvable not just with our product, truth be told, is you were bumping up against the limitations of the software and the ability to render those dots in a pattern and in such a way that you would avoid that halo or have a smoother transition of your gradient so that you could achieve the graphical results you had in mind.
right,
And the answer was rip software so that you could
correct.
manipulate the graphic, not like you said, there's an asterisk. It wasn't really the printer. The printer was doing what it was told, but to achieve the results you want, you had to tell it in a different language, which was the RIP
Correct.
software language.
Right.
So,
And that saved a ton of time, because what I ended up going in and doing was modifying my graphics to print correctly. And whether I
good
went in,
point.
so I would go in and I would manually, instead of having just the drop shadow go in there, I go and manually edit the graphics, which some of those, depending upon how intricate it is, that could take me hours. So I still in the end got the print that I wanted, but
But
the magic really came with a rip.
so let's talk about that. Let's go in that. Let's take that as our cue. As you know, we have the Easy Rip software, which is powered by Cathari. There's no secret there. We still have it. We still love it. We still sell it. It's still a tool in our toolbox that some people like you have really helped master it and have really, you dove into the deep end of the pool pretty quickly and said, "I get it. I love it." And but I want to hear it in your own words. Why this tool? Why? Let's talk about, rather than why this tool, what are some of the benefits you're experiencing?
So the initial benefit is a lot of those fades, drop shadows, gradients, anything you're doing like that, it processes the white differently. So a lot of that white that's going underneath there goes away straight out of the box. I took one of my designs, and it takes Photoshop files, which is absolutely fantastic. Not that I don't love PNGs, but one less step in making that PNG. Everything I design is out of Photoshop. Everything's already transparent. So take that file, drop it in right out of the box. I put it in, print it, and this is when I knew nothing of it. Printed what I knew would be a problem child, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I didn't have the white halo. I didn't have any of that. So that was the original selling point for me, was that. And I saw it on one of the initial videos that you guys did
Mm-hmm.
about it coming soon. And I called right away and I'm like, I need this. And I believe it was Terry that I spoke with. And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, it's not out yet. I'm like, I need this. So I think like a week later, I got mine, or what have you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you
And
were you were definitely one of our first users, and you are definitely one of our power users. So we appreciate that, and I want publicly everybody to know how much we appreciate that you're willing to share some of your time through our Facebook group. That's it's a closed group, it's a private group. It's not just our customers, by the way. A lot of people are misinformed on that. It's about 50-50. And maybe now it's not even that much, like 40% are customers and 60% not, but people find it. And the reason they find it and they stick is because we're not there to try to sell them a bunch of stuff that they don't need. We take down all that sales stuff pretty quickly, but also because of people like you and others that are very willing to give some tips and some strategies and some ideas and some suggestions, and to support the group, right?
right,
Because when you
exactly.
were brand new, you didn't know anything. And so we really do appreciate it, Dan. I don't want to overdo this and fanboy and gush all over you, but thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time, especially on things as technical as the Easy Rip software, because some people are really baffled by it at first. Aren't we all? Right? Let's
Oh
be
yeah,
honest.
no, I was too when I first looked at it, and I appreciate that. But I think it's so valuable. Yes, it's an investment, but if you can look what it does, the white ink savings that's on there, and you'll see there's a lot of discussion on that, like, well, how much money does it actually
Well, why don't
save?
we do this rather than that? What's a personal scenario for you? Because I know that you print a lot of large, full-size prints
I do.
on, extra large, double X, triple extra large shirts. You're going 16 inches by. You're taking it to the max, right? You're doing a
A lot of times I'm doing bigger than that. When I do a lot of my sports stuff that I do, sometimes I'm printing all the way up to 19 and a half inches to get it printed. And that was the first example that I had. Is I had a collage It's all players and such like that. And it was a big old print. And I was printing those out of Garment Creator, and it was about $6.45, 75 cents, something like that to print it. It's a big print.
Mhm.
And then when I switched over to Easy Rip, it's like 345 to print it. I can print it at a lower quality level. And I say quality level because Garment Creator and Easy Rip's levels don't mirror each other. But I can print it for that and I'm saving $3 plus a print. Now, that's an extreme example,
Sure,
very
sure.
extreme example. But with Garment Creator just laying down the solid white base, which is where your money's at, and then the color over it, versus with the Rip software, yeah, it's still going to lay down the white, but only the white where needed. And then the color's going to come over the top. When I first saw Easy Rip print, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way this is going to turn out right. I'm like, they forgot to put down the white over there. What's it doing? And it's the way in which the white is interpreted. But even still on my average print, like if you're just doing solid block lettering, not a huge savings, but anything beyond that
Right.
is, I know the people say, the going number is about 30%. I'd say on average that might be correct, but I'd also willing to be, if your graphics are done correctly, willing to say it's more than that.
Wow. Well, that's
So,
great. That's great
but
insight.
that's also, I do a lot of big prints,
No, I know.
even not the big huge prints. I do a lot of oversized prints. Most of what I print is the oversized style or the look.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, it
I
is
might.
popular. That's really
Yep.
popular. So as soon as you brought that up, I was reminded of our other friend on the East Coast, Marcos at Maximum Graphics, and he's got the same trend, the same style. He's doing huge full color prints. That's not going away anytime soon. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
a certain segment of the market that likes that, but apparently they do. I may not, but if your audience does, and you're getting you don't have to tell me the prices. That nobody should be overly fixated on what you sell things for, but I know it's more than $15.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're selling it for $15, you're doing it wrong. So now, don't get
Well,
me wrong. There's certain instances and stuff like that. But speaking of pricing, just a little tidbit that I see a lot of, and I just want to bring it up,
sure, sure,
is
go.
a lot of people. The biggest complaint that I see is Epson ink is so expensive and this, that, or whatever. I'm like, don't get me wrong, it is expensive.
Don't get us
However,
wrong. We would all like it to be cheaper.
right.
Let's.
However, I know it's expensive. However, if you price your products correctly, there's plenty of profit to be made. Your $15 kind of triggered me on that. And like I said, I've done plenty for that price point if I'm doing wholesale or depending upon how much ink I'm dropping and stuff like
Right.
that.
Correct.
But generally speaking, my one-off out the door, and this varies if I'm doing a huge print, but for the most part, we're talking just a standard print. I don't sell a shirt for less than $25. So I'm very much a believer of let your work and your quality and your service speak for itself. And selling a shirt for $25 is not hard at all.
Yeah. People
So
who people who often push back on that just there's I get it, and Terry and I have this discussion probably a few times a week with customers and future customers. Um, there are plenty of buyers who will buy that $20 to $25 shirt. They really are.
all day.
Yeah, and if you say that they don't have those kinds of people where you live, you also have this thing called the internet, and there are millions of people who would want a high-end custom shirt and would gladly give you $25 for the one of a kind.
Right.
So it depends on your business model. It depends on the design. It depends on your craft. And I love the fact that you strike me as this perfect blend of marketer and maker. You like to make, you like the craft, you like to tinker, you like to get under the hood and figure things out like a true craftsman and artisan would. But you're also a smart marketer. You're not gonna just give it away, and you're gonna make sure to find your niche. You're gonna make sure to please that crowd. Give them more of what they're asking for. Don't try to sell them something that they don't want. So
Right.
listen, kudos to you. And really where this is taking me is I'd love to talk a little bit about how has this printer helped your business grow? What are some of the highlights?
Pretty much it's taken over everything that I do. I I still have my laser. I still run it, but the laser has pretty much been regulated to tumblers being here in Arizona, you always need a cold drink, and it's always hot out here.
Speaking of
So,
which, I'm gonna get my
right,
little.
yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I talk too much anyway. I'm like, I gotta get something to drink. But yeah, I mean, I do tumblers and stuff like that, but for the most part, I keep the rotary in there at all times, and that's pretty much all that I do. Sublimation, I use it a lot more at for the holidays, for Christmas time, for stuff like that. But for most of the time, I don't use it a ton. Most of my time is spent printing T-shirts. I recently, you can see the machine behind me. I recently decided to dip my toe into embroidery. I'm
What?
still,
He's
I'm
gone
still
analog, kids. He's
right. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm regretting this or not. No, it's just a totally different thing. And but even with my embroidery machine behind me, who for the most part for the past 2-3 weeks I've been running almost all day on it, I would much rather be back printing. But that's the creative side in me. I like
Mhm.
printing things, and most of what I print, I would say 90% of what I print is what I create. So even if that's for customers or clients or special requests or anything like that, I roll up me doing your design or at least altering and getting it to where I need it to be in order to get it printed. So most of
Mhm.
it's my work anyway. So a lot of that is, okay, let's go see what this looks like when it prints. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of, self-satisfaction when you're like, hey, not only did I design that, I printed it and that looks nice.
Yeah, I love that. So are you saying then, did I understand you correctly? Even when you're dealing with customers, you're trying to take on more of the graphics so that you can control the process?
Correct.
Okay. Well,
So
tell me why, besides the creative outlet that you want, why is it a smart move for you to manage the graphics process rather than just have a client say, well, here's my graphic and I'll be back on Tuesday?
because if you don't control the graphics, you're really not controlling your quality. So, and I've had instances before where there's some things, if you get, that wonderful 72 DPI 5x5 image that's a photo, there's not too much you could do with that. There really isn't. I've done some really wicked upscaling, and even still you can't save some things. That you can't help. But I mean, as far as like when we're dealing with company shirts or team or
Mhm.
what have you,
Mhm.
um, if I can either adjust it and improve it or clean it up just a hair,
Mhm.
then my end product to the customer is going to be better. The machine's only going to print out what you give it. So if you give it crap, it's going to come out crap.
Well, listen, I think it's also, I love that. And I think it's part of your distinct advantage. It's part of your, it's what your branding relevance. You're relevant because you're willing to go an extra step. You're willing to put more value into it. You're willing to be more creative or say, okay, I heard what you said, and yes, we can totally do that. But I also have this idea I want to try. If you're willing, I could add this, this, and this, and do this crazy cool graphic for you. Oh, that sounds fun, right? Or
Right.
oh, that's so you are immediately taking on that control. And I compliment you, and I hope all listeners who are watching this, and or are they viewers or listeners? I guess they're both.
Both.
That you can remember that lesson that Dan just taught you, which is, he or she who controls the graphic also controls the customer because you just added value that a decorator across the street or down the road or in some other tiny town in Iowa would not have done. So you just brought value to the equation, which is something you could charge for at some time, at some point, not every time, but smart move, brother. I mean, that's a big distinguishing factor. I think that's something that a lot of folks don't. They're either not sure to do it or don't think of it or potentially timid by the coach drops by and he says, don't f with my logo. That's what it is. We're the Mighty Mustangs, right?
Right.
Well, listen, I'm not going to change the Mighty Mustangs, but there's nothing that stops me from saying, I could embellish that, or I could put a new texture behind that,
Right.
or we could modify this in some way that makes it even cooler. And if I could show you that, would you be comfortable with that? Oh, well, okay, I guess I'll wait till we see it.
And that's exactly it. If you're either adding to it, or sometimes it's just as simple as, the Mighty Mustang looks like, kind of like a frog because the curves and the lines are just terrible. and you can just go in, kind of smooth those out. And that's stuff that, and it just comes from dealing with graphics for so long. I see it right away and it sticks out to me.
Mhm.
So be like, hey, let me fix it up and change it. And,
Right. Right.
just minor things like that. Or when you have layered art and you have alignment issues and stuff like that. But
Love
a
it.
perfect example of that is I had a donut shop that I had to.
We're going to talk about the donut
We're gonna
shop.
talk about the donut shop.
All
I hope
right.
I hope the donut shop knows how much good stuff they're getting out of this.
Yes, they're getting a ton of marketing mileage on this.
They are. I haven't gotten permission to use their name. They're a very well known donut chain or shop, but they were voted the best donut in Arizona. So I had this graphic and it was super long. It wasn't overly wide. It was it wasn't an oversized print in the fact that it wrapped or anything like that, but this thing was just long.
Mhm.
And I first got the artwork on it and it was sent over from their marketing and graphics person. And I opened it up and I looked at it and it was one more of those things like, gonna need to fix this. And there were just a few small things. Perfect example, the border didn't line up with some of the boxes on the inside. So I made sure that all the corners meshed and everything lined up so that it looked
Mhm.
nice versus
Mhm.
a graphic being slightly inset where we need to bring that to the edge. But just looking at the colors on it, I'm looking at this going, okay, we're printing this and it goes going on a cool blue shirt, not quite royal, not quite navy, somewhere in the middle there. And the graphic itself was almost a subdued, the colors that they chose were almost subdued in a sense.
Mhm.
And looking at that, I looked at right on the screen. I'm like, this is going to be probably the most work I have put into like testing in a long time. And six, might have been seven. I don't remember what the first one was. 6 or 7 test prints later, I got the colors how I wanted it. And that printed just a beautiful print. The other fun part of it, it was sweeping areas of large solid color, yellows and blues and reds. And there were some muted blues in there and gradients. But, just looking at that going, semi-subdued, going on to this blue shirt
Mhm.
and knowing how it's going to work. It
So
took me about
Dan, were you
3
afraid
hours.
were you afraid it wasn't going to pop? Like you were afraid that
Yes. Oh,
okay.
I knew right away it wasn't going to pop at all. Now, granted, their design was slightly subdued, but I also know just from printing not as many shirts, but as long as I have, I can look at it and go, this is really gonna look super washed out on the
Mhm.
shirt.
Mhm.
So
Lesson learned. I mean, again, to folks listening and watching, a lot of times a designer may have designed something for a different media and now they want to put it on shirts, but the original purpose wasn't shirts. It could have been corrugated boxes. It could have been an outdoor billboard. It could have been anything.
absolutely,
And then they take that same graphic and they want to now put it on a blue shirt, not thinking all the way through the process. So you, with your graphic design background, your skill set now, because you're a more seasoned pro, more seasoned veteran, still the creative ginger that we love. You realize pretty quickly, hey, I might have to modify this, or I'm going to have to tweak this, or I'm going to have to, turn a corner here to see if I can't make this, come to life on this shirt. But that's not something everybody in the beginning is going to be willing or even able to do, right?
right. And I was lucky in the fact of I knew what I was doing with it. It's just I still, even looking at this, and that's why I can't remember if it was 6 or 7, but I took me that many test prints to get it where I wanted it. And that's just me knowing for the most part, I can look at something and know where to adjust the color and what kind of color I'm looking for, what kind of gamut I'm looking for in order to get it to print.
Mm-hmm.
But going on to the blue shirt was new territory for me. It wasn't one of my normal brands of shirts, so
Gotcha.
once I had the pre-treat dialed in exactly how I wanted, I'm like, okay, I know that's good. Now we're going to focus on graphics. But I was also dealing with a graphic that was half vector, half raster. So
Okay.
that was even more fun. But we got there. But I mean, I printed one, so I sprayed an entire shirt 20 inches, put it on my 20-inch plate, and split it into 3 different parts, just because of how long it was. Otherwise, I would have gone quarters. But I wanted to see it, and I printed it once. I'm like, okay, this is better. Printed, moved the design, revised the design, moved it down in the layout, printed it again. So at the end of the day, I was walking around looking at these shirts because I've been looking at them for so long, holding up this shirt, and it's got 3 prints here, here, and here. And then I'm gonna flip it over and look at it again, and my head was spinning. But that was probably the most expensive print that I've ever done. Even with a rip, that print was north of $7.
Oh, wow.
Cost.
Yeah,
Cost.
that's big.
So looking at that, I'm like, I'm not gonna test print 7 of these. That's gonna cost me a fortune. So I
Right.
broke it down and did it in smaller pieces where I could still, all I'm checking is color and quality.
Yeah,
So
that's a great tip. You know, a lot of folks don't know. They just don't think to do that and to, you know, move the graphic down in size and do 4 across and do your
yeah,
color settings at the same time, one print, and then take a peek. And then, you know, by the way, you can't really know this because you can't see it, but when we're doing test prints, we're printing on the front and the back, and occasionally we'll flip the shirt on the inside out if it's not that big of a deal. That's not a critical.
yep.
You know, we're using every inch of that substrate to try to make sure that we don't waste our t-shirts. So,
And I do the same thing as well. I printed the front and I printed the back of it, and I still have a big bin, not a big bin, but Tupperware bin in the back of either shirts that got messed up or I use as test shirts, and I save those because if I printed at the top, there's plenty of real estate at the bottom to test print. There's the backs.
yep.
And if I ever need to test anything out, or, a client wants to see just a printed sample and, send me a photo,
Hmm.
slap it on there and call it a day,
Yeah.
because none of us are perfect, and the printer every once in a while will hiccup too. So you're always randomly going to be supplying yourself with test shirts unexpectedly.
Test shirts that turn into shop towels down the road somewhere, right? So,
Correct.
well, Dan, listen, you've taken so much time. Thank you 100 times over. It's been a fun discussion. But before I let you go, is there anything else about the printer itself, or is there anything out about your experience that you would want other people to know? Like I'm not looking for a pat on the back or a commercial for us, but just like something along the way that you're like, man, this was really helpful, and I want to pass this wisdom on. Is there anything like that that you can think of before I turn the lights out?
Um, Man, I wasn't prepared. Now I
Yeah,
got to think.
I
Now,
know I put
now,
you on the
now I got
spot.
now I got to think. Pro, Not really. We kind of touched on it already, but basically the printer can produce if you have your processes correctly. If you have a good garment, you have good pre-treat, the printer will produce every time. Yeah, it does have hiccups. We were just talking about that.
Right.
But take the time, learn the process. The printer will absolutely do it. And
Dude,
that's
that's some powerful wisdom right there. I mean,
it's
that's the perfect way to wrap this up. We're talking about you just crushing it with a master the basics and know your process. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
and it really is. And for anybody that's in the Equipment Zone group, I pop in there all the time as much as I can to try and help people out. And you'll see me all the time. Hey, PM me your file. I'll take a look at it. And I helped one gentleman where the colors were coming out pink. It was supposed to be purple, and there were some fades and some other things. And something as simple as it was coming out pink because it was pink. But depending upon how your monitor is calibrated and
Ah,
how things are, I noticed it right away because there was some purple in it, and then he was getting some pink in his print, and he posted up some photos on the Facebook group. Send me that file. Let me take a look. Immediately when I opened it, it's not a huge, like, we're not talking like hot pink and deep purple down here, but I looked at it right away. There's hues of pink in there.
right.
So, and that might have been just something as simple as monitor calibration.
Yeah.
But I'm also, a monitor snob when it comes to that, because calibration and monitors and stuff like that have always, no matter what printing process you're in throughout the years that I've been in printing, getting a monitor that's calibrated closely helps with that.
I love it. I love
So
it, Dan. That's awesome. Listen, I'm gonna let you get back to all the goodness that you are, and this has been fun. He's a color snob. He's a shirt snob now. He's a DTG wonder kid. He's the creative ginger. He's Dan Short from Short Designs. Dan, thank you again. So much fun. I appreciate you. Can't wait to see you when you get back over on our side of town. I know we're not that far away.
not at
Um,
all.
but we'll stay close. We'll stay connected. So thanks again for all your time.
I appreciate it, Jay. Thanks so much, buddy.
You bet.